When done right, business is a powerful agent for change to tackle both the climate crisis and social justice. And this month is B Corp month, which promotes the work of companies who are on a journey to do better business. Innocent Drinks have been a B Corp since 2018 and clearly on a mission to do good. And I'm delighted to welcome Emilie Stephenson of Innocent on this episode of First Mile's Climate Heroes. Emilie, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
And Emilie is head of Forceful Good and oversees Innocent's work to make good business. And also joining me is Nick Perry from First Mile, and Nick's our Senior Strategy Associate, and he would manage the process of First Mile achieving B Corp last year. So Emilie and Nick, welcome to First Mile's Climate Heroes. Great to have you on the show, and thanks for taking your time.
Good to be here. Thanks, Bruce.
Thank you.
Good. So Emilie, I want to talk to you first and really understand how you became a climate hero and what motivates you. I think you've been at Innocent for 16, 17 years now.
18 now.
18?
Yeah,
wow. And what motivates you to turn smoothies into a force for good?
Yeah, it's funny the word force for good, because when I say I'm head of Force for Good, people tend to think I've come out of Star Wars and they're not sure what the name is. It's really head of ESG, CSR, PACs, what other
It's a way better.
Our CEO's
title.
chief squeezer, so there you go. Learning from the masters. And I guess I've always been interested in sustainability. That's why I joined Innocent in the first place, and now be able to make a difference. I say both in and out, inside of our products, making sure that they are as healthy as they can be, most nutritious, and then outside all the work that we do, whether it's redistributing our drinks, making sure our packaging gets recycled, that we're giving access to fruit and veg to communities beyond the ones that we sell our drinks to. All of that's part of my remit.
In 18 years, I mean, it's a good stint. It's a good stint. I think I was listening on a previous podcast, like a 3D print of your of your head.
When you get to 15 years, you sit in a room a bit like this with a million, not a million, maybe 100 cameras, and you get a 3D bust of yourself.
Are they flattering?
They're not too bad, actually. They're property of the business, so I can't even put it in my on my mantelpiece.
I can't take it home. And what's changed over 18 years? I mean, obviously, from your fantastic sweatshirt, you've moved into the subliminal marketing at Innocent. What are the big changes over the 18 years that you've witnessed?
I often answer this question by saying not that much, because really the values are very similar.
Yeah.
The people, the culture. It's a lot of work to keep that culture alive. So I think that's one of the big things. However, I would be completely lying if I said nothing had changed, because obviously we've grown massively. We're now in 18 countries. We employ 850 people.
Wow.
We have a factory, so we're part of a manufacturing site. So in that sense, it's really grown. But the foundations are still the same.
And 18 countries, is the UK still the homeland, or is actually markets overtaken?
It's still the homeland, but you know what? France and Germany are edging up there.
Right, okay,
Lots of growth
interesting.
on the continent.
Excellent, super interesting. So we're here to talk about B Corp month. March is B Corp month, so a lot of super exciting things going on, and we're also going to hear a lot more about Innocent as well. But for listeners who don't know, Nick, what's B Corp?
So B Corp is a certification that recognises the highest standards of environmental and social performance and transparency and accountability for businesses. So there's a non-profit global organisation called B Labs, who are the organisation that sort of administers the certification. There's now, I think, over 7,000 B Corps in the world and over 1,500 in the UK.
Brilliant. Emilie, why should anyone care about it? Why should listeners keep listening to this podcast?
B Corp is getting more and more traction, and I think it's a real shortcut to good business practice. And people want shortcuts. People want to know that the products that they're buying, they can trust. So there's the consumer aspect. There's also the investor aspect, same thing. There's a lot of studies that are showing that companies that are B Corps are actually more profitable in the long run. And of course, customers, such as for us, the supermarkets, really recognizing it as well as a gauge of quality. So yes, there's pages and pages of the certification that you can read through, but most importantly, that stamp of approval that you need to recertify every 3 years, so it keeps you on your toes, is really that shortcut to doing good business.
And that recertification process, presumably you have to show an incremental gain between, I mean, we're novices at First Mile on this, and presumably you've had to, because you're probably...
We're recertifying this year.
This year, so this is year 6.
And actually since the last time we've built and opened our factory, so we're now in the manufacturing side,
Right.
which is another kettle of fish. And yeah, we got a score of over 100 last time, so it doesn't mean very much in the grand scheme of things, but it's good.
It's good,
105, more than 105. So to keep that score is what we're aiming for this time, because even that is going to be really hard.
And the business has changed, obviously, if you're into manufacturing as well. And it was a concept that came over from America. The first B Corp was several years before in the UK, before 2018. I think it was Cook Food, one of the first. Why was it important for Innocent to get B Corp back in 2018? Because even then it was sort of this weird American thing. And I want to talk about it in a B2B concept in a second. But from a consumer perspective, it was starting to get a little bit of traction. Why did it matter to Innocent? You were pretty early in the B Corp world.
So we've always tried to do things a bit earlier. We say we take trends and then help make them bigger. So we had identified this in the States, and I think for us the first point was to help internally engage our employees and again show them that was an important point for us. And then I think after that, as soon as it was a bit of a gamble, I guess, but we knew that it would probably take on, and it did. And then since then, our customers, the supermarkets, the charities we work with, and in some cases even our consumers, our drinkers, have witnessed it and have confirmed that it's a good thing for us to be doing.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting point that you say you're jumping on the trend, because since you're so early in the UK to get the certification, to what extent actually is Innocent a brand that everyone looks up to, and therefore you're fueling B Corp's boom in the UK?
Yeah, I guess it goes both ways. And I think back to even smoothies. We didn't invent smoothies, but we took a trend that was existing and made it mainstream. It's the same thing with B Corp. We're helping grow that awareness of B Corp. Of course, there's lots of others. And since then, bigger brands have come on, Nespresso to name one, which has led to some controversy that we might talk about in the future. But we were one of the biggest B Corps to come on early.
We found from a business-to-business perspective, and we primarily did this because we wanted to almost like test our environmental credentials, because we're a purpose-driven organisation. We wanted to test our environmental credentials, but also work with B Corp as a way of getting that verification to our customers that we're doing the right thing. But actually, I wouldn't say it's fallen flat in the sort of B2B world, but there's definitely less fizz around B Corp in the business services world than it might be in the consumer world. I mean, do you think, Nick, from the work you've done and getting us accredited, that it's well known in the B2B space, in the business services space, or do you think it's like more of a consumer?
I think it's definitely getting more well known amongst businesses, especially at First Mile. A lot of our customers are SMEs and direct consumer SMEs, where actually they do know about it and they really appreciate that First Mile has become a B Corp. Consumers are generally more aware of it. You see sort of like B Corp logos on things. You have a general sense that it's a good thing to be a B Corp.
When I say we did it first and foremost internally. It was even to make sure that we were marking, that someone else was marking our homework.
Yeah.
And so that questionnaire, that long questionnaire that you have to fill in, that we love, and all the certifications that go with it, we wanted to make sure that someone external was looking at that. And so that then helped us internally go, you know what, guys, what we're doing, it's actually got some weight. And these external people who've got lots of experience of marking these kind of questionnaires in these businesses have given it the stamp of approval. So first and foremost, I kind of want to say, do it for yourself to help you. And there are loads of tools on the B Corp website, B Lab website, to do it even without having to pay all the fees.
Yeah.
There's lots of questions to help you think about areas which you might not have even thought of before. So I'd recommend that as a first step. And then I think it's a question as to what the value is externally. And then you're looking at your different stakeholders. And we can probably argue it till the cows come home. But I think that notion of having some expert mark your homework and mark everyone in the most consistent way is really appealing.
Absolutely, because I thought when we started in, I thought this is going to be in the 2-week process. It's going to be it's super simple because we're a purpose-led business. We've got really tight reporting and compliance, and we're heavily compliant and all the rest of it. And it's been really transformational for the business because actually some areas were fine, other areas it was a real deep dive and we've changed what we're doing. Did you find that? Do you think? And over the 6 years, I guess the second part of that is, has it actually made the chief squeezer behave differently, or would you have done these things anyway?
Yeah, it's a good question. I often say it's like someone going through your underwear drawer, and I don't want to go too much on that comparison, but they really look at every bit of your business, sometimes the bits that you don't even want to look at yourself. Yeah. So in that sense, it's been really useful. It's helped us accelerate some processes, I think, and it's also helped create a community with other B Corps. So one example in the workers section is our parental leave, which we call parental leave, of course, need a fruit pun. So giving the same rights to men and women, for example. So is that something that would have happened? Probably. Would have happened as quickly? Probably not. Yeah. So it's just getting that speed and having other businesses to talk to and realise what it means. And I think that's really helped us along the way as well.
And what was the big glitch for us, Nick, in terms of our sort of accreditation that was the surprise in the underwear drawer?
I mean, I think there are a lot of things in the waste management industry more generally that hold us back. So, for example, female representation in more operational roles and senior roles, it's very difficult for us to hire, and it's more of a societal issue, but we will lose points on that. We can continue to do our best, and there are a lot of actually points on the B Corp assessment where we weren't able to evidence the things that we are doing. So when we come around to recertify, we weren't able to properly evidence to B Lab that we were doing the things we were actually doing.
Yeah, I mean, that is really interesting that. And I remember thinking, actually, this is about the waste industry, not about us, but actually we are in the waste industry. So, and did you find anything like that, Emilie? There was a sort of big surprise when you went through the first process back in 2018, if you remember that far back?
I can remember. I think for us it was to your point, how do we impact wider change beyond what we're doing as a business? So there's the example I gave before about what we're doing internally, but it's obviously much harder to impact, a fruit farmer in Poland who might have other priorities. So making sure that we're working with our supply chain in a way that works for them, and it isn't just an additional admin burden. Yeah. We can get them on the journey as well, because as you say, we're part of a system. We can't just operate in isolation. So how do we convince everyone to be on that journey? Yeah. It's part of the game, I guess.
Yeah. And I think there's a risk on these sort of environmental podcasts and shows that we're in an echo chamber. But let's sort of be honest here that we're all doing it for a great reason. Other companies out there who just want to get the B Corp logo, slap it on their packaging because they think it's going to give them a competitive edge.
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. And actually, the first time I sat down with B Labs in the very first meeting, first question they asked was, why do you want to become certified? And at the time, I thought it was more of an icebreaker, but actually in retrospect, they're trying to suss out the businesses that are just there to get the stamp of approval rather than do the right thing.
Yeah.
It's so much work and it requires so much commitment, and often, a person's close to full-time job.
Yeah.
When you're a business and you're weighing up the costs, I'm not sure if you're doing it just for that stamp, it weighs and is the return on investment. You have to do it for the right reason.
And I think it's sort of the counterpoint to that is if you have lots of money, then it wouldn't be a problem. But I'm guessing then you'd probably lose it after 3 years because you'd have just gone, we've paid for it, and then it disappears again. Yeah,
I think critics would say that it might be teaching you to do well on a test when you don't actually have the motivation behind it to do well. I don't really think that's the case at the moment with B Corp. And they're revising their standards at the moment to make it 80-point score is what you needed to get to become accredited. But actually in the future, they're going to have more gating criteria across a whole range of topics.
Yes, you have a minimum standard, so there's a minimum level playing field. Yeah.
And Innocent's now $1 billion brand. I just wanted to say that on the podcast. I think you're probably a multi-billion dollar brand now. I mean, it's a huge brand. And do you think that gets to a point where actually B Corp might be getting more than Innocent in terms of sort of exposure? And I'd love it if Innocent printed my logo on all of their bottles. It'd be fantastic. So do you think there's a sort of an element of you're potentially elevating the cause through the packaging, which I'm presuming you'd be totally on board for that, and that's a good thing?
Wow, yeah, I'd love to think of that, but I think it's, at the moment, I see it as a completely mutual, we're helping each other, right? And there's other bigger brands that have also got B Corp on board. So yes, I'm honoured and flattered that you feel that, but I don't think that is actually necessarily the case yet.
I think your mission maybe, or purpose is, Innocent, is to get people to live well and die old. In fact, people and the planet to live well and die old, which is a great sentiment. Do your products, I'm not just going to say smoothies because you make other products as well, do they actually make people live longer? And do you think this is a theme for B Corps to make us all live longer and certainly the planet?
Oh, interesting. We don't say live longer. We say die
Live
old,
well
live
and
well
die
and die
old.
old. So as in have a good life. And interestingly, we have just this year refocused on purpose on making it easy for people to live well through the delicious goodness of fruit and veg. So concentrating on fruit and vegetables, which inherently are healthy, and not so much about the living old, which had some more controversies around it.
Yeah.
Having said that, it's still about living well and living a great life, which long may it last.
Yeah, and who wouldn't want to sign up for that?
Exactly.
Who wouldn't want to sign up for that? And do you think B Corp has helped you build the brand over the years? Or, I mean, it's super interesting to have you on the show because actually you've got such a powerful, strong brand. And as you said, you took something that existed, which was a smoothie, and just you've sort of turned it into this amazing company, which has always had a force for good. And do you think B Corp's sort of supercharged that, or do you think you would have succeeded without it?
I think it's helped us along the way. It'd be disingenuous for me to say that B Corp has been the success of Innocent. I think it's one of the many things that creates a strong brand. And as I said, for consumers, they're starting to see the logos appear. Is that the reason they're buying Innocent? Probably not. However, it's part of a ecosystem of a range of things, which means they want to pick it up from, what they see on our social media to our TV adverts to what we write on our packaging.
Yeah.
So it's one of the elements, I think.
And so I want to understand sort of the 6-year horizon. So you've got certification, then you recertified, and now you're going into the second recertification. What have you had to do? Because there's probably lots of listeners to the show who have either just exhausted because they've just filled out the long questionnaire, or they've just got B Corp, or they might be into their first recertification. What are the things that you need to do to make B Corp work in an organisation and almost become, part of business as usual?
The one thing we have, which I think really works, is we have a group of beekeepers, we call them, across different areas of the business, and they work all through the 3 years. They're not just in the recertification year.
Yeah.
And they each know exactly what questions they work for, and so they know exactly what their objectives are. And having that group of people who meet regularly, as I said, certification year or not, means that there's really someone who's empowered to drive change in the organisation, because change can take quite a while.
Yeah.
So I think it's ownership. There's one person who coordinates it, but ownership of each section to individual people. I think that helps. We also have something which we proudly talk about, which is having 2 extra seats in each of our meeting rooms. We've printed the logo B Corp on 2 seats, which reminds us as a bit of a visual cue to think about people and planet when we are making decisions, such as how do we transport our fruit, or what kind of packaging we're going to have. It's that visual cue.
And of that, I mean, is that your word, beekeepers, or is that a bee?
It's our word. But feel free to steal with pride.
Steal away. And is that of the 850 people in the business? How many beekeepers approximately?
It's about 20.
20. So
yeah.
it's a good group of people who are working with that. And I think, Nick, from our perspective, I'm not looking forward to this answer, but I suspect we're almost a year into our certification. I'm going to get locked up by B Corp. How's it going internally with us from your perspective? Do you think I feel like we need to do probably more work than is happening at Innocent?
There's more we can do. I think, as I said before, there's those sort of low-hanging fruits with policies, for example, that we can implement quite easily, that we're already doing. We just don't have the evidence behind it. As an organisation, everyone here wants to do the best for the planet and people. So I don't think we lack the motivation.
Yeah.
But it's about thinking of the best ways to implement those changes in the business. And it sounds like beekeepers is a great way of doing that.
And it keeps the momentum. Otherwise, you have a big high when you get certified or recertified, but then it drops down a bit. So how do you keep that engagement ongoing in that 3-year period?
I think one thing we have been doing better is much more proactively engaging with all our different stakeholder groups. So going to our investors, going to our suppliers, and having those key questions on environmental and social performance at the front of our minds when we speak to them.
It's back to the framework. It just gives you a framework to operate, which honestly, when you're in your day job, you don't necessarily have time to, you don't make time to create. So having a given framework really helps for that.
It's almost like we rehearsed this, because my next question is going to be about the framework,
there you go.
which has the 5 areas of, I'm going to read them so I get them right: governance, workers, community, environment, and customers. Just picking, I'm going to ask you both, so just sort of picking one area that's been super positive for Innocent and First Mile, and then one that's been much more of a challenge and is sort of an ongoing area that needs a lot of effort to improve. In those sort of framework areas, what's the if we go with Emilie on your, what was the knocked it out of the ballpark really easy for Innocent over the last 6 years in those areas?
I think the workers theme it's the one that you can influence the easiest, I guess.
Yeah.
And the governance, which has got more of the policy side, has been the one that we've really had to turbocharge. So we knew that we didn't have all the policies necessarily in place, and so that's really helped us get our arse in gear. Sorry, can I say that?
Shit together.
Yeah.
We're going to have some swearing on the show, fine. And Nick, whether we sort of found it easy and a real challenge?
As an environmental services sort of business, we scored very well on the environment side, and actually that was testament to us having the evidence and the robust processes in place already. They have a scoring system where if you have an impact business model in a given impact area, you score more points. So we got that on our environmental section.
Yeah.
Area for improvement, I think, would be firming up some of the elements of our supply chain. The waste industry has a very complicated supply chain, sort of downstream. So we're doing a lot of research and trying to firm up what we know about where our waste is going and what's happening in the waste industry further down the line.
Yeah.
Any other waste management businesses B Corp certified?
There are a few. I think Recycling Lives.
Recycling Lives, is the only one in the UK.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's quite challenging.
Yeah, the waste collections businesses, very, very few. I think it might just be Recycling Lives. There are a few others that are doing more of the downstream processing or sorting.
First Mile is the UK's leading recycling company, and we help over 30,000 businesses recycle to reduce their carbon impact. Go to our website, thefirstmile.co.uk, to get started today. If you're enjoying this episode, please subscribe and follow us on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple. What was the journey to building the blender? Was it a scale issue? You just had to get things in-house, or was it more about controlling more of the supply chain so you could monitor the impact more closely?
It was a mix of things. I think first and foremost, it was just because we were growing and it made sense to have our own manufacturing sites. But also, from a sustainability point of view, enabled us to make the drinks in the most sustainable way, because we obviously had full control of the operations. So we might go on to talking about all the details, but whether it's electricity, green electricity, whether it's the way that we clean our pipes with air, not using water. There's all kinds of elements to the blender that make it a super sustainable site. The fact that it's in Rotterdam as well, that's where all of our fruit arrives by boat.
Yeah.
So taking miles off the road, which means having our products travel for less because everything was in Rotterdam, makes sense as well.
So what's the most used fruit, the highest tonnage of fruit you use, the most prolific fruit?
Apple, probably, which comes from Germany, so that's not too far versus Holland, because there's apple puree or apple juice in most of our smoothies.
Yeah.
Grape as well, which comes from France.
Yeah.
So you don't necessarily taste those juices in the smoothies, but they're there to create a base and to create a delicious, stable product.
And the fruit that comes the furthest, which is the best travelled fruit?
So, and it's interesting because the furthest fruit isn't necessarily the most environmentally the one with the biggest footprint, but we have mangoes from India and oranges from Brazil that also travel by boat from those different parts of the world. And
is that do you have is it as a sort of from an environmental but also from a logistics perspective, when you're trying to make strawberry smoothies in winter, is that a real problem, or is the fruit frozen, or are you just bringing it in from different parts of the world depending on how the seasons move?
Exactly, it depends on the seasons, and it depends on each fruit. You can't freeze bananas in the same way, so it really is fruit dependent.
Yeah. Are all of your smoothies made there now, or is it just the European market, or how does that sort of fit into the
So
world?
most of our smoothies are made there. There's a few other packaging. So our kids' products, for example, are made in other places. But in due course, it will be, I think, close to 80% of our products that will be made in the blender. You have to come and visit.
We'll come and visit.
Yeah.
I'd love to come and visit the blender. And then when you go in, is it just like this, something like everything going into a mat? Does it look like a smoothie maker? Does it look like a blender? I mean, how does it bring it to life for us?
From a factory point of view, it's an amazing place because there is so much. So it's on the port of Rotterdam and there's loads and loads of windows. So the natural light is amazing. And the different certifications that we've got, BREEAM certifications, it's not just about, it's not just about the machinery, it's also about the workers and making sure that they're within a few meters of natural light. So things that you wouldn't associate with factories, for example. So big windows overlooking the port and seeing these gigantic ships coming is quite impressive.
Brilliant.
That's more the office side, I guess. So it's not a prefab in the back of the yard. It's definitely an office which has got grass on the floor and all of that. And then the manufacturer's side, which obviously is there, is really high tech.
Yeah.
So you don't see very much. And because a lot of it is automated, yes, there's a lot behind the scenes. But I can talk you through when you come, Bruce.
Yeah, exactly.
I can talk you through all the
different
different
maybe do
techniques.
a live podcast from the blender.
Edie, Janice from Edie.
Are we going to be able to swim in the river of juice like Willy Wonka's back?
Yeah, with your little canoe.
Yeah.
I love it, the Willy Wonka of innocent factories. We like talking about waste. Have you managed to control waste at the site? Have you put in innovative practices there? Because I presume there's peelings and fruit waste that come out of the blender.
So a lot of the peelings happen on the site. So make sure that your transport is as efficient as possible.
Yeah.
So actually, there isn't fruit peelings on there. There is, however, waste and things like reusing rainwater for some of the waste. But there isn't as much fruit waste. That's more done on the site when they are all grown.
So you're not shipping banana skins a long way and things like that.
Exactly. We're just trying to be as efficient as possible with the shipping.
Leaving the waste where it can nourish the land as well, I guess, because
which is a really big part of what we're doing, because a lot of people see waste as they just see packaging, right? And you'll know this more than I do. But a lot of our carbon footprint comes from the way that it's grown.
Yeah.
And so we've just launched something called the Farmer Innovation Fund, bit of a plug here, but it's really a fund to help farmers tell us what they need from us to have the most sustainable agricultural practices. And I know it's difficult for listeners to envisage that because they just think, a strawberry is going to be a strawberry wherever it's grown, but it's completely different. And the impact on the carbon footprint of your product can vary massively depending on how much water you use, what the quality of your soil is. So actually looking at the carbon footprint and sustainability of the product at the heart where it's grown is of paramount importance. Yeah. Not saying the packaging isn't, but in the grand scheme of things, that's where most of the emissions lie.
And your target is to reduce the emissions, because it's interesting, because it's not our targets to get one of your targets is to get a recyclable bottle, but your overall target is to reduce the carbon footprint of a drink, including the packaging and everything in it, by 60%. I can't remember what the number is now. Apologies.
You need to look at it in the realms, and we say a carbon footprint of the product per litre, because obviously we will grow as well, reducing it by 50%. Yeah. 2030.
And from the farming perspective and producing the food, are you working with regenerative farming frameworks?
Yeah, so all of these, the buzzwords at the moment in the industry, and actually linking it back to B Corp, these are all practices that then in turn influence our B Corp score. And so, but the main thing, I think, is to ask our farmers what they need from us. Do they need an extra person to help with data management? Do they need a fake flower in their fields to monitor the number of pollinators? Whatever it is that we can help them with, because from their point of view, they're focusing on yields and growing their crops. We have to help them within that, give them the tools to do that as most sustainable way as possible.
And I think this is the brilliant thing about B Corp, but also with everybody becoming a bit more knowledgeable about the environment, is actually it's not just the product you see on the shelf. It's you have to reach down into the supply,
dig into the ground, literally.
Literally dig into the ground and supply chain. And we are always educating customers around plastics, and particularly flexible plastics, which at the moment are hard to recycle, but we'll get there with it. But flexible plastics are an amazing way of storing and transporting and reducing waste in product, and particularly food. Nick, with our B Corp and our business at First Mile, what was the sort of area where we had to really sort of reach down into the supply chain and do some sort of rummaging around to try and figure out what was going on for our certification?
One area is the sort of subcontracting some of our services. So we need to go to every one of our subcontractors across the country and make sure that they are doing the right thing.
Yeah.
We say we're zero to landfill. We need to make sure we are definitely zero to landfill across the whole of the UK, which is a process we've been through. But that takes a lot of work, and it's a lot of resource to do that.
Yeah. Interesting. And Emilie, going back to the bottle, tell us about the bottle, because you've been on quite a journey with it, with different trying out different ways and
tried so many different things. I think I still remember when we had the bottle that we were shouting on the rooftops, "Oh, it's great, the compostable bottle, PLA."
Yeah.
And then we had the whole recycling industry come at us saying, "Oh, you can't recycle. Why have you done this?" And actually, if you think about it for more than 5 seconds, the people were drinking our smoothies, on the streets, in a Starbucks. They were nowhere near a compost, even if that compost had been able to take our bottle. So along the way, we have made a few mistakes, dare I say it. We've learned from those mistakes. And the bottle that we've got now is, we think, the best form that we can. And it's PET, so it is plastic. It's not glass. It's not Tetra Pak, as a lot of people want us to go to, because they see that as more sustainable. But we've looked at it. We've done the LCA, which means life cycle analysis.
Yeah.
We've looked at the composition of the bottle, and where we are today is the lowest carbon footprint we can have. That's not to say we're not working on more. We want to make sure that in the future none of the plastic in our bottles comes from fossil fuels. So everything comes from a renewable source. And again, I won't get too technical about this, but that's something that we're aiming for in the next few years.
And I think it's fantastic that you've made mistakes and you acknowledge it, because we're all going to make mistakes. Because if it was easy solving the environmental problem, we would have done it already. And I think it's
being aware of the unintended consequences, I think, is one of the things. People say, "Oh, but why don't you just do this or just go to paper?" It's like, well, it's not paper. If you put liquid with paper, it doesn't hold.
Yeah.
But often people don't necessarily take the time, understandably, in their busy lives to really think about what the options are. So we've done that work. If anyone is interested, I can share the pages of life cycle assessment, and it's a fascinating journey. But we're proud of where we are today.
And are you accused of greenwashing, or how do you avoid greenwashing? Do you use that? I don't like the term. Do you use that term? I mean, how do you ensure that you're going to be a force for good forever?
I'm gonna go and talk about another mistake here, which we made, because again, we learned from our mistakes, and that's the importance of it. So we were actually accused of greenwashing probably 3 years ago now. We had an ad with an otter that was singing and a guitar saying, "Together we can fix up the planet."
Yeah.
And the reality is, the ASA, long story short, said, "No, little innocent, you're not going to fix up the planet." And we put our hands up and said, actually, on this one, we were probably being a bit naive. We wanted to create a spirit of positivity in a bit of a doom and gloom of the climate crisis, but realistically it was an aspiration which didn't feel true. So we put our hand up, we've removed the ad, and all the campaigns we've worked on since have been much more tightly managed. But I think the point is, we were trying, and we will still continue to try and communicate on these topics, because if you don't, then what's the point of being here? We have to do it in the right way. It's a fine line, but we have to navigate that.
And I think that's a really important point, because actually we're trying to deliver a positive message, and this podcast is about positive things that are going on as well. But then if you realm too much in the direction of hope, positivity, optimism, then you potentially can be accused of greenwashing. So I think keep trying.
It's the aspiration without making it unrealistic. I often think, what would a cynical mate say? Would he be on that journey, or would he go, "Oh no, you're just exaggerating here"? So I just think having that human touch of not believing your own ivory tower, but being credible and motivational is also really important.
And it's a journey of constantly educating yourself as well. I think a lot of greenwashing comes from naivety, and therefore you sort of need to keep up with what the latest science and the latest methods are.
And legislation is coming along, albeit probably quite slowly, but there's more and more guidance now for businesses, whereas there probably wasn't even 4 or 5 years ago. So
I sort of have mixed feelings about greenwashing companies being accused of it, because some of it is sort of pure sort of misleading. But then there's also the element of people just trying to understand the edges and explore the edges of what's going on. And I think we need to encourage that as well, and encourage people to make mistakes. So,
and it's going to sound a bit cheesy, but it is about collaboration. And there are other people who've been through it. So I think that's where B Corp that's where B Corp really helps as well, is having a community of people you can just fire off an email saying, oh, by the way, what have you done in this? You know they'll have the same values, you know they're all purpose-driven companies who ultimately have the similar objectives. So a community of people who you can test ideas with is also a big plus of the B Corp community.
Do you think we'll need B Corp in 2050, or will there only be good businesses and we won't need it anymore?
Oh, I think, unfortunately, we will need B Corp. There's something called the Better Business Act, which is a change in the law that a group of businesses, not just B Corps, but a group of businesses are advocating for. That's a bit of a level playing field. I mean, it should be happening anyway, right? It's making businesses accountable, not just for profit, as it is currently legally. If you look at Section, I think, 157 of the Companies Act, it's really to create a bit of a level playing field, saying, yes, you have to be accountable for profit, but also for people and planet. That's kind of the base. B Corp, as you described before, is a framework, is a certification method. It's really trying to get you to have continuous improvement within your business. So they're two slightly different things, and I hope that we'll always continue to be the best that we can, even if that sounds a bit like I'm coming out of Miss World.
Yeah.
But, always
and
better.
Nick, do you think we'll need it in 2050, or do you think we'll all have pulled up our socks?
I would hope we're in this utopia where everyone is doing everything for the planet and for people that they can. But I think realistically, B Lab is on a learning journey themselves, and they're going to continue evolving their standards over time and sort of push that bar higher to make sure that B Corps are doing the best they can.
Brilliant, good. So Climate Heroes Hall of Fame, Emilie, we ask guests for each show to tell us what they would put in our Hall of Fame. We've got buckets of worm, buckets of soil, the sun, David Attenborough in there. It could be quite hot. What would you put in our Hall of Fame?
I'll put my cargo bike. Does that fit in? It's quite
It does
big.
indeed,
I have 4
absolutely.
children, so I shove them in the bike.
Excellent.
But yes, without the children, just the bike in the Hall of Fame.
Brilliant. Have you got one of these electrically assisted ones, or
It is
all...
now. Yes, it is now electrically assisted.
That is great. No, they're fantastic. So we'll keep that in the Hall of Fame. It's a great way of moving around the city. Emilie, best hacks for businesses, people listening. What are the best hacks for getting on it or starting their B Corp journey?
Ask questions, and as I mentioned it before, go on the B Corp site, B Lab, just Google as much as possible, speak to businesses. Businesses are surprisingly open when it comes to these things, and they want to talk and they want to share. So I would just say be curious and Google the hell out of it.
Emilie, help our readers become more educated, and can you tell us what your favourite book on the climate is?
That is a hard one, but I'm going to go very factual and very practical, and I'm going to put in The Rubbish Book by James Piper. A, because I love the title. B, because I'm a bit jealous because I would have quite liked to write this book.
And I think you've got a prop, so let's have a look at it so
There
people
you
can
go.
see what they're doing. There we go, The Rubbish Book, James Piper, who's actually, when he was writing this, he was a guest talking about packaging compliance, but he said he was going to write it, so we're getting back and talk about the book on the show. Nick, anything to add to that? Hacks for B Corp?
I think in addition to what Emily's just said, being organised about it, there are a lot of questions in there. So download the questionnaire, use it in whatever way works for you, collaborate on it, put your own filters on there.
On a practical note, having helped quite a few businesses get to B Corp, what I've seen is a lot of businesses not necessarily realising how much time it's going to take. So giving one person the responsibility as part of their objectives, not something else they're going to do on the side because it's going to drown them and ultimately will have the negative, hopefully not, but it might have a negative impact. So one person responsible, and then like we have beekeepers, others who each have their section as part of their roles, not something they do on the side. Would be my thing.
And that sounds, I was going to say, what's the sort of the death spiral pitfall that people fall into? And it sounds like probably not giving it enough time.
Not giving it enough time, not giving enough resource. Yes, it's going to take more time than you think.
Yeah, and I think an issue you can run into is because the process takes such a long time, if you fail to pass on that first go, you're then back at the start of that queue, and it can be months before you get another opportunity. So
yes, that's not to say, yes, there's the bit that it takes ages because obviously you need to collate all the information, but also there are so many businesses now trying to get the B Corp accreditation that it physically takes, the process takes time. There's not enough accreditators.
Yeah.
Is that the word? People who accreditate.
Yeah, people to do the work with for. Yeah, brilliant. Okay, so it's B Corp month. Overall, is it still worth striving for B Corporation? Is it still relevant, Emilie?
Absolutely, it's relevant. And B Corp month is the month when everyone's going to be talking about it. So to my point before about being curious, you probably won't need to be that curious. It will come to you in March. So keep your eyes peeled.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree. I think definitely encouraging all businesses to get B Corp certified. It's the most realistic approach in our current system to making positive change. There will always be critics of these sorts of certifications, but I think they're doing a great job.
Yeah, and I'd add to that, I mean, it makes you change the way you think about business, and it makes you a better business, which we're all experiencing at First Mile, I'm sure, at Innocent as well. Emilie, it's been fantastic having you on the show. Thank you very much for coming on First Mile's Climate Heroes. And Nick, thank you for joining us, taking your time out of your busy schedules to come on the First Mile show. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.